My sister stood in front of the entrance to my own luxury hotel, laughing that I couldn't afford to go in. My mom joined her, telling me not to embarrass the family. They had no clue I owned the entire building, and everything in it. Then my head of security walked up. Family blindness can be expensive. Can you imagine pouring your heart and soul into building an empire, only for your own family to dismiss you at every turn? What if, on the most important night, they tried to physically block you from entering the very place you secretly owned? That's exactly what happened to me, Abigail Thompson. And the moment the truth came out, it shattered everything. Growing up in suburban Minneapolis, I was always the odd one out. My parents, Richard and Diana, ran a respectable accounting firm, and my younger sister, Stephanie, was their golden child. She was everything they valued: pretty, popular, and content to follow traditional paths. Me. I was the quiet, ambitious one who started a business selling planners at 16 while Stephanie was cheering on the football team. My mother would constantly ask, "Abigail, why can't you focus on something practical? Look at your sister, that's how you get ahead." My father's disappointment was palpable when I chose hospitality management over law or accounting. Hotels. You want to be a glorified housekeeper. We didn't raise you to be so. He trailed off, but the message was clear. I wasn't enough. While my parents bankrolled Stephanie's Ivy League business degree, I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. Front desk shifts at a hotel, classes, then waitressing until late. It was grueling, but those years taught me more than any textbook ever could. During my junior year, I met Rachel Winters, a professor who saw something in me no one else did: raw determination and an uncanny eye for opportunity in the luxury market. "Most students see properties as they are, Abigail," she told me. "You see what they could become." With Rachel's guidance, I landed an internship at Meridian Hotel Group. While other interns fetched coffee, I was tearing apart their business model, finding inefficiencies, and quietly drafting proposals. One day, I accidentally left an analysis report on the regional director, James Harrison's, desk. I thought I was surely fired for overstepping. Instead, he called me into his office and offered me a junior management position. "This analysis is better than what I get from consultants I pay thousands for," he said. "We need people who think like you." When I called my parents with the news, their response was a lukewarm, "Well, at least you'll have steady employment. Stephanie just got offered a junior analyst position at Goldman Sachs, you know." That was it. That was the moment I stopped sharing. They didn't know when I became a hotel manager at 26, or when I developed a loyalty program that boosted Meridian's revenue by 15%. They certainly didn't know when I left at 28 to start my own boutique hotel consulting firm, or when I bought my first struggling property, the Athena Hotel, a year later. The Athena was my crown jewel. I transformed it from a faded 5-star into the most exclusive boutique hotel in Minneapolis. Within 18 months, I acquired a second, then a third, and by my 32nd birthday, I owned a small but prestigious collection of luxury hotels across the Midwest. My penthouse suite at the Athena became my home. All this time, my parents and Stephanie remained blissfully unaware. In their minds, I was still stuck in some middle management hotel job, barely scraping by. I never corrected them, partly because they never asked, and partly because their assumptions revealed more about them than they did about me. My closest friend, Michael Chin, my brilliant security chief and former military intelligence officer, was my confidant. He understood my vision, my drive. He was the supportive environment my biological family never provided. Then came my father's 60th birthday. A milestone I felt I couldn't miss. 2 months before, my mother group texted, asking about dinner venues. "The Athena has a great reputation," I casually replied. "Their private dining room is supposed to be exceptional." "It's very expensive," she shot back. "Probably out of our budget." "And yours, obviously." Stung as always. I offered to help with costs. "We don't need charity, Abigail," she sniffed. "Your sister is doing very well at her firm and has offered to cover half." I bit back my retort and offered to look into industry discounts. She reluctantly agreed. That afternoon I called Jackson Porter, my general manager at the Athena. My family is planning my father's birthday dinner here next month, I told him. They have no idea I own the place. Jackson just laughed. Cosmic irony or fantastic timing? A bit of both, I said. When they call to reserve for the Thompson party, give them our best private dining room, the Winston Suite. Full service, premium everything. But quote them half the actual cost. I'll cover the difference anonymously. And when I arrive, treat me like any other guest. I'll find the right moment to reveal the truth. Weeks passed. My mother haggled with Jackson over the surprisingly reasonable rate. My executive chef, Elise, crafted a special menu. I even arranged for my father's favorite wines. A week before the event, Stephanie called. "So, you're actually coming to Dad's birthday?" she asked, skeptical. "Mom says you got some kind of discount at the Athena. How exactly did you manage that? It's not like you're a VIP guest there." The perfect moment to confess, yet her condescending tone hardened my resolve. "I've done some consulting work for hotel groups," I said vaguely. "Industry courtesy, right?" She didn't hide her disbelief. "Well, try to dress appropriately. The Athena is pretty upscale. Maybe I can lend you something if you don't have anything suitable." I glanced down at the custom Valentino I was wearing for a business meeting and just smiled. "I'll manage." She hung up with a parting shot. "Just don't embarrass us." Oh, the irony. The night before the dinner, my mother called again. More guests. More cost concerns. "We're thinking it might be best if you handle the tip for the servers instead," she suggested. "That way you can participate without stretching your budget too thin." I closed my eyes and counted to 10. "Sure, Mum. I'd be happy to take care of the gratuity." After we hung up, I sat in my office, looking out at the Minneapolis skyline. Was I being childish? Maybe. But this felt like the perfect, earned opportunity to address years of dismissal. I called Michael, outlining my plan. "It's a bit theatrical," he said, laughing. "Sometimes a demonstration is more effective than an explanation," I replied. "Besides, they've written their own script for this. I'm just following their lead to its natural conclusion." The evening of my father's birthday arrived, perfectly timed with a light snowfall. I wanted to see my family's entrance, so I watched from my private office, adjacent to the main kitchen. My mother, in her decade-old St. John suit, immediately started inspecting everything. My father looked impressed, adjusting his tie. Stephanie arrived with her new boyfriend, Derek, both dressed to the nines, and she instantly took charge, speaking loudly to the concierge as if she owned the place. Jackson, my GM, personally escorted them to the Winston Suite, where champagne and appetizers awaited. My mother's surprise at the lavish spread was visible, even on the small screen. "Everything is prepared according to your specifications, Miss Thompson," Elise, my executive chef, said at my door. "The 1962 Bordeaux is decanting." "Perfect, Elise," I said, smoothing my midnight blue Da Vinci gown. "It's time for me to make my entrance." I texted Michael to take his position. Then I took my private elevator down, exited the hotel, and walked around to the main entrance, approaching like any other guest. I stood back slightly, watching the remaining guests check in. Just as I prepared to follow them, Stephanie emerged from a hallway. Her eyes landed on me, narrowing with immediate judgment. "Abigail, you actually showed up," she said, looking me up and down. "Wow, you borrowed something nice." "Hello, Stephanie. You look lovely," I replied, refusing to take the bait. She frowned, disappointed. "Mom was worried you'd back out or show up looking like you just left work at wherever it is you're working these days." "I'm exactly where I want to be career-wise," I said honestly. Then Michael entered, impeccable in his tailored suit. Before I could explain he wasn't joining us, my mother appeared. "Abigail, finally. And who is this? We didn't arrange for extra seating." "This is..." I began, but Michael smoothly cut in. "Good evening, Mrs. Thompson. I'm Michael Chin, head of security for the Athena Hotel. I just needed a brief word with Miss Thompson." My mother's face flushed. Security. Abigail, what have you done now? Before I could respond, Stephanie stepped directly in front of me, physically blocking my path. Is there a problem with her reservation? She asked Michael, talking about me as if I wasn't there. We can cover her portion if that's the issue. My mother moved closer, her whisper carrying perfectly. Abigail, don't embarrass the family. If you're having financial problems again, you should have said something before coming to a place like this. The lobby went silent. Several guests and staff were watching. Jackson, my GM, appeared, watching with barely concealed amusement. He caught my eye. I gave him an almost imperceptible nod. Actually, Michael said, his professional tone unwavering, I wanted to inform Miss Thompson that her special requests for the evening have been arranged according to her specifications. Special requests. My mother looked confused. What special requests? Stephanie rolled her eyes. Mom, she probably asked for the cheapest wine option or something. Can we please go back to the party? Derek is telling Dad about his new BMW. She tried to guide my mother away, still blocking me. That's when Michael cleared his throat. Loudly. Mrs. Thompson, Miss Stephanie, perhaps you're unaware that you're currently preventing the owner of this establishment from entering her own property. The silence was absolute. My mother froze mid-step. Stephanie slowly turned back to me, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. Excuse me, my mother finally managed. Jackson chose that perfect moment to approach, extending his hand to me. Miss Thompson, everything is prepared for your father's celebration. The chef has included all your requested items, and the 1962 Bordeaux you selected from your personal collection is exceptional with the prime rib. My mother's face had drained of color. Your personal collection. I smiled, finally stepping around my stunned sister. Yes, Mom. From my wine cellar here at the Athena. I've been meaning to tell you both. I own this hotel and the Meridian downtown, and 4 others across the Midwest. Stephanie's mouth opened and closed without sound. My mother grabbed the nearest chair for support. That's not possible, she finally whispered. And yet here we are, I said, gesturing toward the restaurant. Shall we join Dad and the others? I believe we have a celebration to continue. As we walked, the hotel staff greeted me by name, their respect undeniable. The whispered, "Good evening, Miss Thompson," created a symphony of recognition. Just before entering the Winston suite, Stephanie grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. "Why didn't you tell us?" she hissed, her confidence completely evaporated. I looked at her hand until she released me. "You never asked," I said simply. "None of you ever asked." Then I pushed open the doors. The rest of the dinner was surreal. My father, initially shocked, slowly let pride replace his confusion. "So this is why you've been so secretive about your work?" he asked me later by the dessert table. "You own this entire place. This one and several others." "Confirmed. Why keep it from us?" There was genuine confusion in his voice, not the defensive edge of my mother and sister. "At first I wasn't sure I'd succeed," I explained. "Then when I did, it became clear you all had a fixed idea of who I was. After a while, it just seemed easier to let you believe what you wanted to believe." He looked troubled. "I suppose we haven't given you much reason to share your successes." It was the closest to an acknowledgement of their dismissive treatment I'd ever received from any family member. My mother, however, had her social mask firmly back in place, though her tone was brittle. "Abigail, the Clarks are asking about the historical photographs. Since you apparently know everything about this place, perhaps you could enlighten them." As I excused myself, I overheard my father ask her, "Did you have any idea about this?" "Of course not," she snapped. "She's deliberately kept us in the dark to create this spectacle." By the time dessert was served, a custom bourbon caramel cake for my father, the party had split. Those intrigued by my success, and those threatened by it. The Robertsons and Clarks peppered me with questions. My mother and Stephanie sat in strange silence, Derek looking uncomfortably between them. When the celebration finally ended, my father embraced me warmly. "I'm proud of you, Abby," he whispered before being led away by my tight-lipped mother. Stephanie lingered. "So," she finally managed, "all those times we thought you couldn't afford to join vacations or contribute to family gifts. I was building this," I finished for her, gesturing to the elegant surroundings. "And I did send gifts, substantial ones. The Hawaiian vacation for Mom and Dad's anniversary last year. The Christmas checks. All from me." Stephanie looked genuinely confused. "Mom said those were from a distant cousin who'd had a windfall." I laughed without humor. Of course she did. Heaven forbid I be successful in a way she didn't orchestrate or approve. After they left, I returned to my office, kicked off my heels, and poured myself a generous glass of the Bordeaux. Michael knocked lightly and entered. "That was quite an evening," he said. "How are you feeling?" I swirled the wine. Relieved, vindicated, exhausted, sad. All of the above. "And now what happens tomorrow when the shock wears off?" he asked. That was the critical question. The revelation had been dramatic and satisfying in the moment, but I knew this was just the beginning. "I suspect my phone will start ringing very early," I said. "My mother will either demand explanations or attempt to rewrite history to claim she always believed in me. Stephanie will likely vacillate between resentment and attempts to capitalize on her connection to me." "And you'll respond how?" Michael asked. I set down my glass, sudden clarity washing over me. "I'm going to set boundaries, clear, firm boundaries, for the first time in my life. This isn't about revenge or gloating. It's about establishing the respect I should have had all along." The next morning, my phone began ringing at 7:03, my mother. I let it go to voicemail. A text from Stephanie followed immediately. "We need to talk. Can I come by your hotel today?" I ignored both, instead calling Dr. Eleanor Hayes, my therapist. By the time I arrived at her office, I had 17 missed calls, 23 texts, and an email from my father. His message was simple. "I owe you an apology. Many apologies. When you're ready to talk, I'm ready to listen." That email, so different from the others, gave me hope. "The question isn't whether you should forgive them," Dr. Hayes said. "The question is what kind of relationship you want moving forward and what boundaries need to be in place to make that relationship healthy for you." By the end of our session, I knew my next steps. It wasn't about punishment. It was about creating a new dynamic where my autonomy and achievements were respected. I returned to the Athena, instructing the front desk to send up any family members who arrived unannounced. Then I sat in my penthouse, looking out over the city I'd conquered on my own terms, and replied to my father's email. "I'm ready to talk alone tomorrow at 2 p.m. in my office at the Athena." It was time to reshape my family relationships as deliberately as I built my business empire. My father arrived 10 minutes early. "This is quite a view," he said, gazing out at the skyline. "It's why I chose this office," I replied. I wanted to be reminded daily of what I was building. An awkward silence hung between us. "I don't know where to begin," he finally said. "The hotel's your success. The fact that you felt you couldn't share any of it with us." "I tried, Dad," I said, my voice even. "When I got my first management position, when I started my consulting firm, when I acquired this hotel, I called home each time. The responses were always the same. Dismissive at best, undermining at worst." He looked genuinely surprised. "I don't remember. When I called about my promotion, Mom said, 'At least it's steady work,' and changed the subject to Stephanie's new apartment. When I mentioned starting my consulting business, you asked if I had a backup plan for when it fails. After a while, it seemed pointless to share." His face flushed with shame. "I remember now. I didn't realize. I thought we were being practical, encouraging you to be realistic. You were practical and realistic with me. You were ambitious and encouraging with Stephanie," I stated matter of fact. "Different standards, different expectations, different support." He didn't deny it. "Your mother and I, we understood Stephanie's path, the corporate ladder. Your interests seemed so unconventional. I supplied. We worried. Perhaps we protected our own comfort by doubting yours. He looked at me, truly meeting my eyes for the first time in years. I was wrong. We were wrong. What you've built here is extraordinary, Abigail. The simple, overdue acknowledgement hit me with unexpected force. I blinked back tears. Thank you for saying that. Your mother is struggling with all this, he continued. She feels deceived. And Stephanie? Yes. I imagine they both feel threatened by the disruption to the family hierarchy, I said. But that's not actually my problem to solve. He nodded. What happens now? I outlined my boundaries. Individual relationships, no gatherings where I'd be minimized, honesty about my success, but no tolerating attempts to leverage my resources without respect. That seems reasonable, he said. More than reasonable. I also told him I was removing the anonymity from past gifts. The Hawaiian vacation, the Christmas checks, even my contributions to his retirement fund. His eyes widened. The extra investment returns. That was you? Yes. I've been supplementing your account since I sold my second hotel. I wanted you and Mom to be comfortable, but I knew she wouldn't accept direct help from me. He looked stunned, then deeply ashamed. All this time we've been treating you like the family underachiever, and you've been quietly supporting us. I didn't do it for gratitude, I clarified. I did it because I could and because despite everything you're my family. But moving forward I want transparency. He agreed. After he left, I spent the afternoon solidifying my plan with my attorney, financial advisor, and Dr. Hayes. Operation Family Reset, as Michael jokingly called it, was in full swing. I felt prepared, centered, and finally in control of my own narrative. The next morning my mother appeared unannounced, clearly expecting to be ushered in. Mrs. Thompson. Jackson greeted her with perfect professional courtesy. Do you have an appointment with Miss Thompson today? Her indignation was visible. I don't need an appointment. I'm her mother. I understand, Jackson replied, but Miss Thompson is currently in meetings. I'd be happy to check her availability later. The boundary, so simple, so standard for anyone else, was clearly shocking to her. She left, but not before informing Jackson she'd deal with me directly. She called immediately. What on earth is going on, Abigail? I was treated like some sort of stranger. You were treated like any other visitor without an appointment, I corrected gently. I run a business, Mom. I have meetings, responsibilities. Would you drop by Stephanie's law firm and expect to be immediately shown to her office? The silence on the other end. This is different, she finally said, but with less conviction. It's really not. My business, my career, my professional standing. They all deserve the same respect you've always given Stephanie's. Another pause. We need to discuss what happened at your father's birthday, as a family. I'm happy to talk with you, Mom, but not until you're ready to acknowledge some uncomfortable truths about how you've treated me and my career choices over the years. This isn't about. It's exactly about that, I interrupted firmly. I'm not angry, and I'm not trying to punish anyone, but I am establishing boundaries that should have been in place long ago. By the end of our conversation, we'd agreed to meet the following week with Dr. Hayes. Stephanie, surprisingly, proved more adaptable. She arrived that afternoon, Derek in tow, requesting a tour of my sister's amazing hotel. The pivot from condescension to sudden sisterly pride was transparent, but I accepted it as a starting point. As I showed them around, she peppered me with questions about clientele and profit margins, clearly calculating the full extent of my success. Derek seemed genuinely impressed. You know, Stephanie said as we ended the tour in the rooftop garden, we should talk about potential collaborations. The firm is always looking for impressive venues, and family discount rates would be a win-win. And there it was, her true purpose. I don't offer family discount rates, I said pleasantly but firmly. The Athena maintains consistent pricing for all clients. But your firm is welcome to book through our corporate events department like any other business. Her smile faltered. But surely for your own sister. I value our relationship too much to complicate it with business entanglements, I interrupted smoothly. Clear boundaries between family and business are essential for both to thrive. Derek nodded appreciatively at this, earning a sharp look from Stephanie. That evening I had dinner with Michael in my penthouse. Phase 1 complete, he said, raising his glass. How does it feel? Like I'm finally the author of my own story, I reflected, instead of a secondary character in someone else's. The challenging meeting with my mother still lay ahead, but for the first time I felt fully prepared. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my narrative and establishing the respect that should have been there all along. Sometimes I reflected, the most powerful response to being underestimated isn't proving others wrong. It's living your truth so completely that their opinion becomes irrelevant. The family meeting with my mother took place in a neutral conference room at Dr. Hayes's office. My mother arrived early, rigid and defensive in a tailored navy suit. My father arrived later, nodding to me with cautious optimism. Dr. Hayes established ground rules. No interrupting, no personal attacks. I statements only. We're here to establish healthier communication, she explained, not to assign blame. My mother looked skeptical but agreed. I began calmly, speaking about my experience as the less favored child, the dismissal of my career, the minimizing of my achievements. While I was working 3 jobs to put myself through college, you paid Stephanie's full tuition and housing, I stated. When I landed my first management position, you changed the subject to Stephanie's new apartment. When I called to share I'd started my own consulting firm, Dad asked if I had a backup plan for when it failed. My mother's face flushed. Diana, would you like to respond? Dr. Hayes asked. I think there have been some misinterpretations of our intentions, my mother said, tightly controlled. We've always wanted what's best. The concern wasn't the issue, I clarified. It was the assumption of failure, the lack of support, the constant comparison to Stephanie's more appropriate path. My father interjected quietly, confirming he made me pay for college. My mother turned to him, betrayal evident. That was different. Stephanie was at an Ivy League. All the more reason I might have needed help, I pointed out. The conversation continued for an hour, my mother defensive, my father reflective, me steady. Dr. Hayes expertly guided us. The breaking point came when my mother finally voiced her core grievance. Why did you hide your success from us? Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to learn about your hotels in front of all our friends? To realize our daughter has been lying to us for years. I wasn't lying, I replied evenly. I simply stopped sharing. There's a difference. But why? She pressed, genuine confusion breaking through her anger. Because every time I did share, you diminished it. After years of that, it became clear that my success didn't fit the narrative you had created about who I was. It was less painful to keep it to myself than to have it consistently devalued. Something in my measured response finally penetrated. My mother fell silent, her gaze dropping to her hands. I never thought of it that way, she said, her voice uncharacteristically small. I always saw myself as the practical one. For Stephanie, you were her cheerleader. For me, you were the voice of caution and doubt, I said gently. My father reached for her hand. She's right, Diana. We've treated them differently. We've expected Abigail to fail and Stephanie to succeed. And both have fulfilled our expectations. The admission, so simple, so profound, hung in the air. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to fix this. It starts with acknowledgement, Dr. Hayes offered. And it continues with new patterns of interaction. We outline those new patterns. Respect for my boundaries, acknowledgement of my achievements without qualification, no more comparing me to Stephanie. I would be honest about my life. And Stephanie? My mother asked. My relationship with Stephanie is separate, I explained. We'll need to find our own path forward. 3 days later, Stephanie requested a meeting alone. We met at a neutral cafe. I don't understand why you're doing this, she began without preamble. creating all this family drama, making mom and dad feel terrible. I'm not doing anything to them, I replied calmly. I'm simply establishing honest, respectful relationships after years of the opposite. They've always supported us. They've always supported you, I corrected. There's a difference. Her indignation shifted to uncertainty. I never asked to be the favorite. I know, I said. But you never questioned it either. When they praised your conventional choices while dismissing my entrepreneurial ones, when they funded your education while making me work 3 jobs, when they celebrated your achievements while minimizing mine, you accepted it as the natural order of things. She stirred her latte. I didn't realize how different things were for you. From my perspective, you always seemed so independent. I became independent because I had to be, I explained. And then that independence was used against me as proof I didn't need the support you automatically received. Our conversation was the most honest we'd ever had. Stephanie never fully acknowledged her role, but she did express a tentative willingness to establish a more equitable relationship. I can't promise I'll get it right immediately. Old habits and all that. I'm not expecting perfection, I assured her. Just effort and awareness. Small shifts followed. My father called, genuinely interested in my business model. My mother sent a handwritten note apologizing for her reaction and requesting a proper tour of the Athena. Stephanie texted about meeting for lunch, no ulterior motives. Michael observed these changes with measured optimism. Family dynamics don't transform overnight, he cautioned. There will be backsliding. I know, I acknowledged. But for the first time I feel like they're seeing me, the real me, not the version that fits their predetermined narrative. A month later, my mother organized a family dinner at their home. I arrived prepared for regression, but found subtle, meaningful changes. She had framed articles about me and my hotels on the living room wall alongside Stephanie's diploma. My father asked my opinion on an investment. Stephanie mentioned a client who raved about the Athena. The most telling moment came during dessert. My mother mentioned a fundraising gala. We'd love to have your support, Abigail, she said. Then, catching herself, added, not because of your resources, but because it's a cause I think would interest you given your involvement with women's entrepreneurship programs. It was a small adjustment, but it was a significant shift in perception. As I drove home, I reflected. The birthday dinner had been dramatic, theatrical even. But the real work had happened in the quieter moments afterward. The honest conversations, the established boundaries, the gradual rebuilding of relationships on authentic foundations. The revenge I'd initially contemplated had transformed into something far more valuable. Genuine recognition and respect. Not because I owned luxury hotels, but because I had finally demanded acknowledgement of my worth beyond external markers. The family dynamics weren't perfect, but they had shifted from automatic dismissal to conscious effort. That movement represented a revolution. 6 months after that fateful birthday dinner, I stood on my penthouse balcony, watching the sunset. The city glowed golden, a beautiful backdrop for reflecting on how dramatically my family relationships had transformed. There had been setbacks, of course, moments where old patterns resurfaced. But the difference now was that these instances were recognized, addressed, and corrected. My relationship with my father had improved the most significantly. He visited the Athena regularly, genuinely curious about my operations, even offering accounting advice with professional respect. I never gave you enough credit, he admitted during one of our monthly lunch meetings. I was so focused on traditional paths that I couldn't recognize you were pioneering a better one. My mother's transformation was slower but meaningful. She no longer dismissed my career or compared me to Stephanie, though she sometimes struggled to comprehend the scope of what I'd built. But her willingness to try, to ask questions, to visit my properties with genuine interest, was progress. I've been recommending the Athena to everyone at the country club, she told me proudly. Cynthia Blackwell was positively envious when I mentioned my daughter owns it. Imperfect support, but support nonetheless. Stephanie and I had established a more honest, if sometimes awkward, relationship. The competitive dynamic hadn't vanished, but acknowledging it had diminished its power. We even collaborated on a charity event hosted at the Athena, combining her legal connections with my hospitality expertise. "We make a good team when we're not trying to outdo each other," she observed. "We always could have," I'd replied. "We just never gave ourselves the chance." Beyond family, my professional life continued to flourish. I'd acquired 2 more properties, expanding my portfolio to 9 luxury hotels. Michael was now Chief Operations Officer. And most significantly, I'd established the Thompson Women in Hospitality Foundation, providing scholarships and mentorship to young women in the industry. "You're creating the support system you never had," Dr. Hayes observed, turning personal disappointment into structural change. It felt more constructive than just being angry about the past. My personal life had evolved too. After years of prioritizing my career, I started dating James Bennett, an architectural restoration specialist. He understood the demands of building something meaningful. "Balance isn't about equal time," he'd said. "It's about equal respect for what matters to each person." That philosophy allowed our relationship to flourish. As the sun disappeared, Michael joined me on the balcony with 2 glasses of wine. "Contemplating your empire?" he asked. "Contemplating the journey," I corrected. "Professional and personal. Any regrets about how it all unfolded?" "The dramatic revelation?" he asked. I considered it. I think the drama was necessary. My family had spent decades comfortably dismissing me. Comfort needed to be disrupted before real change could begin. Michael nodded. "Speaking of family, your mother called the front desk today. She actually made an appointment to see you next week, rather than demanding immediate access." I laughed. Progress comes in many forms. Later that evening, I checked my email and found a message from my father. He'd attached an article about female entrepreneurs that featured me prominently. "So proud of what you've built," his message read. "Not just the hotels but the foundation, the mentorship programs, all of it. You've created success on your own terms, which is far more impressive than following someone else's blueprint. Stephanie and I were talking yesterday about how your approach to business has inspired her to consider more creative directions in her legal career. You've influenced all of us more than you know." The message brought unexpected tears to my eyes, not from sadness or lingering hurt, but from the simple power of finally being seen and valued for exactly who I was. The truth I discovered over these months was that revenge, in its traditional sense, had never been what I truly wanted. The fantasy of making my family regret their dismissal had been satisfying and abstract, but the reality of building healthier relationships had proven far more fulfilling. What I'd really sought wasn't their regret, but their recognition. Not of my material success, but of my worth as an individual. That recognition had finally come, imperfectly but genuinely. Not because I'd forced it through dramatic revelation, but because I'd created space for it through honest communication and firm boundaries. The greatest revenge against those who underestimate you isn't making them sorry. It's making their opinion irrelevant to your sense of self-worth. My family's validation, now freely given, was welcome, but no longer necessary. I had built that validation from within, brick by brick, alongside the hotels that stood as physical manifestations of my vision and determination. As I prepared for bed, I thought about the young women in my foundation program, many of whom faced their own struggles with doubt and dismissal. The most valuable thing I could offer them wasn't just financial support, but the understanding that other people's limitations should never become their own. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? How did you respond, with anger, withdrawal, or determination to prove them wrong? Drop a comment below with your experience. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story resonated with you. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from our most painful experiences. And I'm grateful to each of you for allowing me to share mine. Until next time, remember that true success isn't measured by others' recognition, but by the life you build on your own terms.